read the book, classical book of the Cloud of Unknowing. Penguin Classics. Must be a classic or it wouldn't have a penguin on it. So it has the penguins, and of course we only read it because it was good. Chapter 26, and therefore labor hard for a while, beating upon this high cloud of unknowing, and then rest. So he says to rest after you beat on the cloud. Do you know how to beat on a cloud of unknowing? Anyone who habitually, you were talking about habit, anyone who habitually practices this work will unquestionably find it laborious, yes, very laborious indeed, unless he receives special grace, or else has been practicing it for a long time. Didn't you just saying if you take up something for a long time, you get a habit?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what is it?
You become addicted.
Is it special grace or is it a habit from practice? Which is it? Did God send it or did you? Who did it?
I don't know.
Did God send a special grace or did you just put in effort? Which is it?
Oh, maybe the God inside you.
But I ask you, what is it that is laborious? Certainly not that. Devote, stirring of love. That is continually produced in His will, not by Himself, but by the hand of Almighty God, who is always ready to bring about this work in every soul that inclines to it and that does all it can to prepare itself for it, and has been doing it so for a long time. Then what is it that is laborious, I beg you? Why, the labor is all in treading down the thought of all beings that God ever created, and in keeping them beneath the cloud of forgetting mentioned earlier. This is all that is laborious. He's saying putting the cloud of forgetting, putting down the stuff that you need to forget, is laborious. For this is the work that human beings must do with the help of grace. And the other mentioned above, that is the stirring of love, is the work of God alone. So press on with your work. And I promise you for certain that there will be no failing on His part. Press on hard, then let us see how you manage. Do you not see how? He is standing and waiting for you. For shame, work hard only a little while, and the greatness and difficulty of this labor will soon be eased. Usually somebody put in labor, it's eased after a while, don't you think? Like if you work hard at a sport.
Yeah, it becomes an addiction.
I thought if you worked hard, let's say at a sport, like after a while it becomes easy.
It becomes difficult to do it. Yeah.
For though it may be hard and rigorous at first, when you have no devotion, later when you have devotion, what was very hard before will be made very restful and very easy for you, and you will feel
Why do you read like that?
either little effort or none at all.
Just read fast, you know all those things.
I have to write colorfully.
Sometimes you go fast, sometimes you go extremely slow.
It has to be dramatic. This is not dry religion class. This is non-dry. We're studying non-dry theology. This is not dry. For then, God will sometimes do all the work. Well, that's convenient. God will do the work. Did you ever notice that God does the work in meditation Himself? Did God ever do the meditation? I had a meditation where the Master was doing the Simran, and I just sat there. He did the work, but not always, and never for long at a stretch. only when He pleases and as He pleases. So God does as He pleases. We're kind of stuck just waiting. Remember how you said I was like the waiting man? And then you will find it pleasant to let Him have His own way. Does that make sense? You will then find it pleasant.
You do that, you just sit down, you don't do it.
To let Him have His own way. But then perhaps He will at times send out a beam of spiritual light, piercing this cloud of unknowing that is between you and Him, and show you some of His mysteries, of which human beings are not permitted or able to speak. Then you will sense your feelings of flame with the fire of His love far more than I can, may, or will tell you at this time. For of the work that belongs to God alone, I dare not take it upon me to speak with my blabbering fleshly tongue, and put it briefly. Even though I dared, I would not. But of the work that belongs to human beings when they feel themselves moved and aided by grace, I'm glad to tell you, for that is less dangerous to speak of than the other. It's less dangerous to speak of grace, which is the same as what the Master says. You say it's all due to His grace, right? If you say that you accomplished a meditation and you did this meditation and you did it, people get angry with you. But if you say it was all His grace, first and foremost, chapter 27, first and foremost, I want to tell you who should engage in this work of contemplation.
It depends what you say by you.
What?
Are you, when you say you identify yourself with that, with the soul that's God, or you identify with the brain and the body and the
You
emotions?
identify with the God.
You identify with the
You can become the
soul,
God.
then it is God, and it is you at the same time. I mean, it cannot be somebody else.
Well, he's saying for...
So in both cases, it is still you. It is God. When it's God, it's you. When
Yeah, I know.
it's God.
That's why we're reading... this seems very modern for a stuffy old theology book from the 14th century. This was supposed to have been stupid and dry, but for some reason it's not. Chapter 27.
So why did you get it then?
It's not. It's not dry and stupid. It's a very effective. Remember we were reading The Way of Unknowing, John Main's Christian meditation? Well, where do you think the founding concepts come from? They had Christian meditation way back in the 13th century and the 14th century. Chapter 27, first and foremost, I want to tell you who should engage in this work of contemplation, and when, and by what means, and what moderation you should use in it. If you ask me who should work in this way, I answer, all who have sincerely forsaken the world, and who then commit themselves not to active life, but to the way of life that is called contemplative. You can't exactly be an active, materialistic person, dear, and be a contemplative. Though you can be a contemplative and be active, probably. It should be balanced is the problem. People are way too active and not contemplative enough. All these should engage in this work by grace, whoever they may be, whether or not they have been habitual sinners. He says whether or not you have been habitual sinners, that to engage in this work by grace, if by grace you engage in it. Well, it goes on with the interesting points here. Chapter 28. Then, if you ask me when they should engage in this work of contemplation, my answer is this. I say, not before they have cleansed their consciences of all the particular sinful deeds they have previously committed, according to the accepted requirements of Holy Church. You can't exactly sin a lot and do this stuff. For in contemplation a soul dries up within itself the whole root and ground of sin that will always remain in it ever after even the most thorough confession. He's saying that you can dry up sin by contemplation.
Don't read and explain to me.
So anyone who wishes to undertake this work must first cleanse his conscience, and then after he has done all he can, according to... I'm a high priest, though. I'm very stuffy and repetitive to the rules of penance.
Read my book.
Just give me, I'll be done with this section here. He shall apply himself boldly yet humbly to contemplation, and he should think that he has been kept from it for too long, for this is the work at which a soul would toil all its lifetime if it had never committed deadly sin. It's an interesting point here. He's saying if a man had never sinned at all,
there is not such a man, okay?
He would be in contemplation. He's saying, this is the work out of which a soul would toil all its lifetime if it had never committed deadly sin. And while a soul is dwelling in this mortal flesh, it will always see and feel this burdensome cloud of unknowing between it and God. And not only that, but as a penalty of original sin, one will always see and feel that some of the beings created by God and some of their works keep on pressing upon the consciousness between oneself and God. And this is the just judgment of God. For when man ruled over all other creatures as their sovereign Lord, he has willingly made himself subservient to the impulses of his subjects, disregarding the command of God, his maker. And so afterwards, when he wishes to obey God's command, he sees and feels that all the creatures that should be below him are thrusting proudly above him, between him and his God. Right, interesting and advanced material from very ancient times. Not ancient, but nevertheless, we read chapters from the Cloud of Unknowing.